And we are back for another episode of the producers recapping our most recent episode. We
I
featured
matey.
I matey R. Yeah, exactly. It's so hard not to do that, especially just a little disclosure before. We definitely had Denver on the books for a hot minute, and the whole time we were talking about, Denver's going to come on and talk about pirates, and it was like a week or two before when we were just talking about like reference material and stuff like that. And he's like, it's actually not really about pirates, and we're like, oh, but we have all this.
But Denver.
Yeah, but we have all this stupid stuff we're saying like R and pirates and matey.
Well, and he wrote a really good article about pirates, but apparently
Right.
he did so for a favor and had to look the stuff up to do it. And he's like, that's not really what I do. But that's
nice. Okay. So as the episode is titled, I believe it's Pirates, or rather British Impressment. So the episode's actually about British Impressment. And it was a really cool, interesting episode. I knew nothing about this topic before coming into it, so that's always fun. So, Lynn, I'm just going to take it first, if that's okay. One of the things that kind of surprised me, but it's funny. I mean, it kind of makes sense in the way things have come about. But like the idea that something that stuck out was the idea that legal pirates essentially became a very large navy.
Right.
For
how do you create a navy? You legalize piracy.
You legalize piracy. Exactly. You just bring in a bunch of guys, mercenaries. It was like a mercenary converted into an army.
Right.
And then they eventually became the dominant force in the oceans for a while, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah. It's kind of crazy when you think about it.
I mean, it's staggering. That's just like, it's like, I'm not caught up into, Pirates of the Caribbean 6, 7, 13, 23.
Exactly.
But that's like them hiring Jack Sparrow after an amount of time. And I don't think that ever happens. I could be wrong.
Well, you're not up to the number. I mean, that could be, for the 100th movie of Pirates of the Caribbean.
And I'm kind of a purist. That first one was so good, but the follow-ups weren't my favorite. Anyway, we don't have to go into that conversation right now. And Lynn, here's something also that really stuck out. These people were being impressed and so forcibly put into service.
Mm-hmm.
How crazy is it that people were cross-dressing in order to not be seen as men? People were creating literal fake law firms so that they had like fake businesses that they had to be a part of. I mean, that is, I guess the only thing I have for reference is hearing, hey, cut off your pinky toe if a draft ever comes around. You know what I mean? Or
go to Canada. I mean, there have been lots of people who've, gone to Canada, or exactly, maybe, I don't know if they faked an illness or created an illness in order to get out of it. But it is kind of like that, isn't it?
Yeah.
You just do whatever you have to do to not have to, go on the seas and not a very enjoyable life.
No. And I don't know if you know this, Lynn, the ocean is very big.
It is. It's also deep.
Very deep.
I think.
Pretty deep.
Yeah, it's kind of scary.
It's very scary, and it's not a place. It's like scarier than space to me at this point,
right?
Because at least I can't get to space.
You're not going to accidentally fall into space one day, whereas you could just fall off a ship.
Yeah, it's like
or a boat.
Whenever you're flying across an ocean or like above water. Just the thought of a plane going down, yikes.
Terrifying. Oh my gosh.
Or if you're from Maryland, driving the Bay Bridge, that is a massive.
Oh my gosh, yes.
Yeah. So anyway.
It's a cool bridge, but yes, it's thinking about, it's kind of scary.
Landing in the water. No thanks. So now that we've gotten my bugaboos out of the way. Lynn, anything stick out to you in the episode that was like particularly cool or fun?
Well, I really liked when Denver talked about he researches the spectrum of free and unfree labor, because he said that these impressed sailors, so you could just be at a bar drinking. And he talks about how if you signed up, you got a shilling. So what some job recruiters would do is put the shilling at the bottom of your drink. So if you, sort of chug your drink and you swallow that shilling, well, you've just accepted the job because you can't give the shilling back anytime soon. But, so people would feel like that, impressment. Okay, you're impressed to the Navy, and they would call themselves slaves. But then, like he's saying, enslaved people were like, hey, we'd be happy to be impressed because, one,
Right.
it only lasts the duration of the war, so there is an end. It could be a while, but there is an end to it, and they also get paid.
Right. Right.
So you have like this spectrum of, free and unfree labor. So although these impressed sailors call themselves slaves and they are in a way unfree, they're certainly not to the level of enslaved people who would happily
Sure.
be impressed knowing that there was an end to it and that they were getting paid.
Yeah. And if, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think in the episode he does reference that a few enslaved people actually did sign up.
Yeah.
Or I guess potentially freed enslaved people, so emancipated. But yeah, it's and they actually took those jobs. It's that's so crazy. It reminds me of, and this is going to be totally not the same thing, but if you're ever at a popular beach or in California, like Hollywood, or in a lot of cities, people are usually like handing out, and this is going to date myself, but handing out CDs, and they say free CD, or CD, take this, right. $5. And then if they hand you the CD, if you're just not paying attention, you take it, then the person comes up to you and says $5, and you're like, I don't want this. And then you try and hand it back. You're like, I don't want it. Like
you already bought it.
You took it. So you essentially bought my music. And then, people can get really feisty with that as far as like, if you don't give them the five schmeckles to like continue about your day. And of course, the stakes in that are much lower than a life at sea for multiple years.
Right. But it's the same kind of idea.
Man.
Now I've transferred ownership. So
right.
You owe me money.
Yeah.
It cannot be transferred back.
No, the second your car drives off the lot, it depreciates
That's right.
90%.
That's right. We'll take it back for 1/3 of the cost. I know.
Yeah. So yeah, I mean, that's crazy. And one of the things also that I thought was really great, that cracked me up is, and this I think is applicable in national versus state law, and then country to country law. The idea that American sailors who were being grabbed for impressment, Americans being newly American, they had, I guess it was called perpetual allegiance. And it was because at one point you were a servant of the crown, or you belonged to the kingdom. And so just because you live in a new country, that doesn't actually change the idea that you're not available for the British Army.
You're still available for the taking. I mean, that's the War of 1812.
Right.
That these American sailors are being kidnapped, impressed by the British, and saying, "Well, we're not impressing or kidnapping Americans. They're still British.
They're still British."
Like,
yeah. Yeah, like that's the first time you've ever heard I'm an American British.
Right.
Right?
Yeah.
Like, or I'm American British. How would you
British American.
Well, no, because it's the inverse, right?
Oh, so yeah, American British. That doesn't even sound right.
Would you say I'm British? I'm I'm
an American Brit.
If anyone out there has an idea, please leave your thoughts in the chat as far as what the hyphen should be for impressed or unimpressed American sailors. I know, God. It's killing me not making some crappy joke about being impressed or being not impressed the entire time.
I am not impressed.
No, I just thought that was so funny that it's like, well, you technically were a part of this, so that doesn't go away because you're not a citizen.
Right.
Anymore.
It's like if you went to a certain college, you're like, they call you 30 years later and ask for money. Because you'll always be part of that college.
You know what? Funny enough that you bring that up. I shout out to Towson University. Fortunately, I have not kept my addresses up to date with them, so I don't.
They'll often find you.
Oh, they'll find me, but they don't often ask me for donations. But that is so funny that can happen. And they just like, give us money. It's like, you're charging $5 million a pop for each kid. You don't need money.
Right? You have enough money.
I support the sports teams. Yay. But I don't know.
Well,
so
yeah. So there were a couple things that kept coming up while we were doing the episode. All of these like fun phrases. Like, I wonder if that comes from the Navy. So I actually went to the Naval History and Heritage Command, their website, to look up some of these phrases. I learned some things, and we do mention knowing the ropes. And so what does that mean today? That, knowing the ropes, what would I say? Yeah.
Like, you kind of understand, you know, like the tasks, you're familiar.
Right. Yeah. So what this source says is that it's changed a little, because originally it meant that you were a novice, but you knew the basics of seamanship. So you knew the basics of like, this rope does this, but you're still a novice. So it's interesting that kind of switched a little bit. Yeah. So it wasn't, exactly how we see it today. Another word was bamboozle. I mean, you use that all the time.
Fantastic word.
Every day we're hearing Pat talking about being bamboozled. But this comes from...
Wow! With the drive-by, Lynn. Man! That's
like
awesome.
Bamboozled again.
Yeah. I am flummoxed.
And this is, it's very similar to how we use it today. And if you've seen the movie Master and Commander, you've seen an example of bamboozle, but it's where you trick another ship as to your origin or what your ship is. So in Master and Commander, they don't want, they're a British ship, and they don't want the French to know that they're British. So they start pumping out smoke, and then they look like a whaling ship. They're like, oh, they're just a commercial whaling ship. And then they wait till they get close, and you'll bomb the crap out of them. So bamboozle.
That is very cool. And
I thought that was
so
cool.
glad you brought those up. Yeah, that's so funny. Yeah, because like, if you know the ropes, you kind of seem like a master
You're an
of something. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, totally.
Yeah. So it was very cool to see that that's actually changed a little bit, because I would think someone, on a ship, oh, he knows the ropes, but he only knows the ropes. There's a lot more than ropes, apparently.
That's so fascinating. That's so cool how those things evolve and like change and are so incorrect.
Right.
And just we were watching Arrival not too long ago. It's a really cool movie about aliens coming to the Earth, and Rachel McAdams is in it, and she's trying to communicate with them.
Oh yeah, I love that.
It's awesome, and
she's
she's like I guess a language historian, or like I don't remember exactly what the term was, but one of the things they talk about is when I believe the British got to Australia, and I'm paraphrasing, I could be wrong here, but essentially that the Aboriginals who were there, when the British pointed at a kangaroo, they said, "What is that?" Yeah, and the people were saying kangaroo. So they called it kangaroo. What it actually means, I don't understand what you're saying.
That's awesome.
So like, what is that? They said kangaroo.
Like, I don't understand what you're saying.
And so now we call it a kangaroo.
We point and we say, I don't understand what you're saying.
Yes,
every
exactly.
Happy animal. Oh.
and to be fair, I don't understand. Those things are so strong. They're like,
oh my gosh, like the muscles on some of them, terrifying.
Horrifying. I want to visit Australia. I also don't want to get murdered by everything.
It's kind of terrifying. Yeah.
All right. Well, on that note of kangaroos and pirates, and bamboozled and
knowing
the ropes and all of that stuff. Lynn, as always, it's great to talk to you and reflect on these episodes.
Yeah.
And then we'll be back in a few weeks to talk about some stuff that might be a little spicy. We'll see. We'll see how it goes. And actually, we might have our guy Jordan back next week or next episode. Yes. Maybe
our fearless leader.
Fearful leader, fretful.
Our fearful leader.
Awesome. All right. Thanks, Lynn. Our nervous, anxious, over, probably underslept.
New dad. Yep.
Yeah. Whew. Anyway, our bamboozled leader. I'll see you next time,
by the
Lynn.
Child. Yes, and don't forget to listen to Denver's episode everywhere that you get you get your podcast because it's so much fun.
It's fun. It's great. He's awesome.
He is.
2c4hpod.com to listen to it. Check it out on Odyssey app. Check it out on podcast app everywhere. Spotify, Apple, iTunes, blah, blah, blah. All those things. Go check it out. It's a fun episode. And we'll see you next time.
See you next time.